Hazy sunshine, June 11th in the afternoon, about 3 minutes before 1 o'clock on the banks of beautiful Lake Champlain at Peru Dock. Right near the... And Roger's arriving. There he is, right there. Roger Harwood, right near his home. Actually, today is double whammy today. Today's the 22nd anniversary of the very first program Calvin Castine ever did for Hometown Cable. That doesn't seem possible. If we have time, we'll have a moment of silent prayer. Bless those who've gone before. Hundreds and hundreds of programs, and I've been attached to this since 1997. I've enjoyed every single moment of it. Also, but not necessarily an afterthought, is the fact that today is commemorating the relighting of the Bluff Point Lighthouse across Lake Champlain on this hazy day, but you can see it. We haven't been out there with our cameras before. I don't know if Calvin went out there with Bob Venn before I came aboard. No, so we're going to go out there for the first time today. We've taken a lot of trips from this location out to Crab Island and have enjoyed every single one, but this will be our first time at the lighthouse. It's going to be open for the public during the day today. Then they'll have the relighting ceremony right nearby here. There's a tent to my right. And that'll be happening sometime tonight around 7:30. They'll have the ceremony, and then as the commercials or public service announcements on the radio and television stations and in the newspaper said, they'll wait till it gets dark, not for fireworks, but for the relighting of the light, and that'll be nice too. So what do you say we jump aboard this wonderful pontoon craft? Pray that we don't have severe thunderstorms in the process of this show this afternoon, but if we do, there'll be even more excitement. Stay with us. I think we'll have a good time for the relighting of the Valcour Lighthouse. I'm afraid you're just going to have to use your imagination. Calvin didn't have the camera running during the boat trip, but we had a good captain and a good boat. We're on the island. Roger Harwood, how are you, buddy?
I'm great. It's great to have you back here, and it's great to have you on board the pontoon boat to tell another story, Gordy.
You know, I am embarrassed to say, and Calvin will join me in our mutual embarrassment, neither one of us have ever set foot on Valcour Island before.
I can't imagine.
He spent his entire life here, and I've spent most of my adult life here. Been around it, been, moored off the shore many times, had lots of meals, but never stepped foot on this island. We kind of adopted Crab Island in the last few years, thanks to you.
There's new stories being told up there.
Oh, my goodness.
But this is a great place, and it's so important to have you guys here and for this historic day and share some of the story of this historic lighthouse and the people that have worked so hard, Gordy, to bring this day about. And you're going to meet some of those people today, hopefully all of the people that
have worked when you're getting tents all the way out on Valcour Island and tents back on the shore at the boat launch site, Peru boat launch, then you know you got serious business. Why is this day so significant, Roger?
Because, Gordy, the light is now finally back where it started. 131 years ago, this lighthouse was lit. And now it's back here and where it belongs, we think. The story is long. Early 30s, the steel tower was erected, and it was powered by an acetylene generator, which produced produced a gas. That's the reason for the big steel tank at the bottom.
Oh.
And the gas went up through a tube and provided the fuel for the light. And my assumption is that it would have been too dangerous to have in all these lighthouses, like the Lucky Clark lighthouses and all the others. So they moved it away pretty much on the same site, and there it stayed. The acetylene became obsolete. Then they ran them with batteries that they would change periodically. And then they eventually went to solar-powered lights, which are what we have today now back in the lighthouse. And the light that you'll see there today is identical to the light that was that ended up on the steel tower and then was removed. So that's many decades of history right there in a nutshell.
You know, I'm sure the vast majority of people watching our little corner at Hometown Cable today have never been on this island. And the closest they've come to So the Bluff Point Valcour Island Lighthouse is in some of the beautiful photographs, paintings, and drawings that have been done over the years. It sure has been a subject matter for artists.
Oh yeah, it's been a great place for people to photograph, for people to videotape. Lots of media are using this, and if you're here tonight, you'll hear me talk about how popular this has become, and I'll share that with you. All the major lighthouse publications, books and magazines, have picked up this story. All the major websites have picked up the story of this lighthouse, and so it's not only a local thing we're doing today, it's become a national.
Well, it is a landmark.
And it is a landmark.
It's obvious to anybody who sees it, who's interested in lighthouses, and I find that many people are, they recognize it. But your wife has spent a little time out here. We know you spent time here too, but Linda...
She has been the driving force between this effort. I started by mowing the lawn and fixing some of the windows, and that was pretty much all I did. And then she got involved. We built a house across the way. She got involved and has dragged these people in to work, and most of those people.
The operative word is dragged in.
She dragged them. She dragged them over here in her little boat, and is just. They've done a tremendous amount of work, and I can't say enough about everything they've done.
There's no way to estimate the thousands of volunteer hours that have been spent on this lighthouse.
Hundreds and hundreds of
hours. I'm sad to say it wasn't in very good shape when they started.
It wasn't very nice, and she'll share some of that part of the condition of the lighthouse when you talk to her. The school bus yellows and the brilliant blues that were in there. It looks different today, and we're all very excited, especially those of us that have been close to it. But Gordy, this is the volunteers working, the volunteer effort. It's the U.S. Coast Guard who has made this light a true aid to navigation. This light we see up here was a true navigational aid. The difficulty with moving it back in was the trees had grown up. You'll see a picture inside where the tree growth here is very, very low. So the lighthouse obviously was effective, but over the years that cutting stopped because they didn't need to continue that. The light was moved out closer. So to do this, the Coast Guard and the New York DEC had to really jump through some hurdles to accomplish this, and they're to be commended for all of this. And we've helped facilitate that by making it so it's a nice place to be.
Well, it's a marriage. A lot of people involved on all levels.
Yep. Lots. Yep.
So today we're celebrating the relighting.
Right.
Many people call it the Valcour Lighthouse, but the true name is the Bluff Point Lighthouse on Valcour Island, isn't it?
This is Bluff Point on Valcour Island. This little piece of land juts out into the bay, and you've talked about the bay over here, Valcour Bay, which is very historic.
Sure.
From Benedict Arnold's battle. You'll see interpretation of that battle when you go inside. This is a pretty important place. I do want to mention one thing to you, Gordy. When I came home from a long trip to Portland, Maine last night, I looked across here, the light was on. And that's what this light was for, to guide people in the fog and to guide people up through here in the dark.
And we're recording this on the afternoon of June 11th, 2005. Most of the fog is burned off, but there is a haze in the air, which is pretty obvious. And when we pulled into Peru Dock, we weren't sure we could see the lighthouse. You said you should have been here at 4:30 this morning.
That's all you could see.
Socked in is the word, right?
And it's actually, when I came over this morning, it's the very first time that I had to use a compass to make sure I got where I wanted to go and to find my way back. But this light did that for so many mariners for so many decades, and then after that, the light on the steel tower did that. But this is a historic day. You know that we were there for the relighting of the Lucky Clark lighthouses.
As a matter of fact, the Clarks are going to be recording
here
tonight, and that's wonderful for Calvin. Too many things going on these days.
Yeah, I know. This light was installed last fall, very late in the year, and so we decided rather than have it in the middle of November, a ceremony, we'd have it on a nice day. You guys provided
picked a good
just
one.
a perfect day for us.
Addie Shields, our Clinton County historian, did she come over?
She came over and is going to come back later. She didn't want to try the path because the path is kind of steep in the back.
You know, I've been meaning to ask you, how does the president's jacket feel with the Clinton County Historical Association? You've worn that for a while now.
It's a full-time job. It's fun, and ask me on Monday.
There's a lot to do.
There's a lot to do.
A lot to think about it, but you've got such a passion that can't help but be infectious for other people.
We have so much going on, so much ahead of us in the future. So many great things are happening with the organization. They had a street drive this morning, and if you can imagine doing this event and a street drive on the same day, but we've done it. I hear back that it's working. That part's working. Trying to raise funds for to do the things, the activities that we want to do.
We've said it before, but this is a good place to intersperse it or interject it into our program. The public has to take ownership of these things, like the Bluff Point Lighthouse and the other projects you're involved in. The entire effort of the Clinton County Historical Association, the public has to take ownership and get involved. Without their support, their physical, volunteer support, and their monetary support, we could never do it.
Well, this is a good example of what can happen when people really get together and work hard. We have docents here in the summer on Sunday afternoons. I don't know if I mentioned this to you another time, but Gordy, the middle of the winter, we had 100 people come across the ice in a near blizzard.
Did you? Come on.
100 people came over here on one Sunday afternoon.
That's one thing I never did was walk across the ice.
We had good ice conditions this winter, and to go back to what you said earlier, this past week I had a chat with Mrs. Raboff. Dr. and Mrs. Raboff were the last owners of the lighthouse before the state took possession of it. And she called to tell me that she couldn't make it today because she was ill, but she was happy this event was going on. And one of the things that really struck me, she said it's so easy to destroy and so difficult to preserve. And this is a perfect example of what can happen when people cooperate to try to preserve something.
What is the actual date of the construction of this building?
I think it started in 1871, and I believe the light came on in 1874. About 1931, the steel tower was put up, so this lighthouse has been pretty much abandoned for a long, long time. It was a guest house for the private owners.
The Millars are on the top. Is that what you were looking at?
And Linda Harwood.
And Linda up there too?
To Roger, not to me.
Uh-oh. She's telling you, Roger, you tell them the whole story. I won't have anything else to say.
She'll have lots to say.
You think she might, huh?
She might. And,
well, I'll tell you what.
She deserves so much credit for what's gone on.
It's wonderful that the lighthouse is open for people to view. And as I said, we're recording this on June 11th, 2005. Just about summertime here in the North Country. You couldn't ask for a better day for this.
Yes.
And the lighthouse is open today from like 1 until 5 in the afternoon, right?
Right.
The actual ceremony, and people will be viewing this long after it's passed, will be held at 7:30 in the evening on the other shore.
Over on the mainland, next to the boat launch. And it's all. And I do need to point out, Gordy, what we're doing is opening the lighthouse the Sunday of 4th of July weekend, and every Sunday through Labor Day.
Isn't that great?
And we have lots of people, and one of the beauties of doing this is the vandalism has stopped. We really have people now that appreciate this project and treat it with respect.
Isn't that important?
It's very important.
That's what I said. It's even if the guy in the street can feel as though he owns a part of this Bluff Point Lighthouse, he's not going to destroy anything. He's going to say, what can I do to help?
It shows people care.
Yeah.
And we've had great success by having it open. People can get inside. They don't have to try to break in, because now, and we have a sign in the window that tells when it's going to be open, and we have, again, volunteers that staff it, and and open it to the public
those
from
people-
from 1 to 3. I should say from 1 to 3 on those Sundays.
On those Sundays. For those people who have never been here, this is a regular stopping spot for people with boats on the other side of the island. I mean, it has been for since the beginning of time. People have rowed over here and come over here and had picnics and walked the island. And
Hundreds and hundreds of boats will be here on nice weekends, and so many of those people now find their way. Now the word gets out that it's open. More and more come every day, every Sunday. Lots of them are our neighbors to the north, and they've learned, to respect this and appreciate what's being done out here, and been contributors to the project, financial contributors.
And we're just tickled to death that you've invited us here today and keep us abreast of all the things you do. We love to watch you work, Roger, and we have for years.
Just don't come to my house and see how little work I've done on that.
Never mind. We'll skip that part of it, but we will go inside the lighthouse,
great.
take a look around, and find Linda. What do you say?
I'd love to have you do that.
Let's do it. I lied. We're not going inside for a minute because we met Dan Levy from DEC. How are you?
Pretty good. It's a beautiful day today.
Oh my goodness, it couldn't be much better for a trip to Valcour Island and celebrating the relighting of the lighthouse. This is a big deal for us, you know.
Great project, and it's great to see it finally come to fruition.
Tell me a little bit about you. Where are you from?
Well, I currently live in Saranac Lake, and
It's not bad. I got lots of family members who live in Saranac Lake. That's good.
it's a nice area. It's really nice to get out here, though, and see the lake, too.
How'd you get hooked up with DEC?
I went to school to become a forester, and after
Smiths, or where'd you go?
UMass Amherst.
No kidding. See that? My granddaughter Megan went there for 2 years. I love that campus.
That's real nice.
I wanted her to come home, but I begged her to stay there because I love to go over there.
That's why one of
That's
the
a
reasons I
great
chose
spot,
it.
isn't it? Just love that campus. Fabulous campus. So you came back. Are you originally from Saranac Lake? Or?
No, I grew up a little southeast of Albany.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and growing up, spent hours hiking the high peaks.
Oh, boy. It doesn't get much better than that, huh?
No, it's pretty good. I also spent a lot of time on Lake George.
Did you?
It's,
You know, sometimes we forget what a beautiful spot we live in up here in the North Country.
well, in the winter when it's snowing and the spring when it's raining, it's easy to do.
But you know, Roger was just telling us that on a blizzardy day in the middle of winter, very cold, over 100 people walked across the ice just to come over here to Valcour.
Yeah, it's a popular spot.
Isn't it amazing? Well, what's been your role here, Dan?
Well, Roger and many other people here locally that are involved with the lighthouse, with one of my meetings originally with the Champlain Islands Unit Management Plan,
Yes.
contacted me with an interest in having this light relit, and I spent quite a few hours putting it together over the last few years, and some of it had already been started, but we had some problems dealing with the Coast Guard's requirement to have the light visible for 180 degrees on the lake, and that turned into quite a bit of paperwork and back and forth before we were able to come up with a agreement and cut the trees that we did, a minimal amount, and have the light relit. And last November we were able to get the light put back in, and today we get to rededicate the lighthouse.
Isn't that cool? Did you man the chainsaw over here yourself? Or
No,
did you,
I did not. I had the Coast Guard do that, actually.
That's good. I like that idea.
Yep, the Coast Guard did a great job. They sent a whole bunch of guys here from Rhode Island, and the guys were well skilled and did a great job for us.
That's great. And as a result of all that, we are here today, and this is a celebration. It's got to make you feel good to be at this point, isn't it?
It sure is. I just wish it was a little bit cooler today.
He's sweating. How is it? I thought I sweat more than anybody in my life. We interviewed a poor guy who's restoring a railroad station in Morse yesterday, and that poor guy, we finally had to get inside. I thought he lost all the moisture in his body dripping off, and you're doing pretty much the same. Dan, we're going to let you go, but thank you so much for everything you've done to make this day a huge success.
You're welcome.
Best of luck in the future.
Thank you for attending.
See you later. We just want to have you get a good shot of the weather wax leaving Valcour Island. It's been truly a shuttle back and forth and will be on a regular basis. New York State has hired Frank Papston the weather wax to make this trip back and forth. All part of the Transportation Museum, which has been opened some months ago on the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. We'll have an historical campus there, Lord willing, and if the creek doesn't rise. The Interpretive Center has already been opened. It's a classic. Transportation Museum is growing by leaps and bounds with its focus. The wonderful old Lozier and Dr. Tony Vaccaro and other people working there, and Frank is spending a lot of time there. So the weather wax came here from down in Essex County, and we're delighted to have it as part of the back and forth shuttle service to Valcour Island today and many other days. So if you get a chance, hop on board and take a free ride across Lake Champlain and look at this beautiful site from the vantage point that we're seeing it today on June 11th, 2005.
Well, it's free today. I don't think it's free every day.
Oh, it isn't?
I don't think so.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I think it's only about $5.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's free today.
Hey, and that was the whole
Yeah.
thing. Free.
Any sunglasses up there?
Yeah, any sunglasses? Whoa, I didn't know if I was supposed to repeat that. Any sunglasses up there? Linda Harwood, how are you, lady?
I am so excited. Today's such a happy day for me. I
Well,
can't stand it.
You and I, with Calvin present because he holds the camera, have talked about this lighthouse so many times. Blood, sweat, and tears you have really expended in getting here to this day at this lighthouse. It's one of those feel-good
Oh,
days.
awesome. I will just correct you on one thing. Blood and sweat, even a diamond out of my ring, but absolutely no tears. Every day
A
out
diamond
here.
out of your ring?
A little one came out somewhere. So that'll entice people to come over here. Maybe they'll find it.
That's the tears. I got the tears for you right now.
Oh, no.
We're on the third floor. We're in a little tiny place. A couple of years ago, I wouldn't have been able to hold my breath long enough to stay up here because I was so fat. But why is this little landing up here important to you?
This is special to me because as I did the lighthouse, I painted everything in antique white. But when I started scraping the walls up here in the woodwork, I found this beautiful blue-gray. And it's the original color in this area. And so after quite some time, I was able to match it up. And I just think it's charming and so tranquil to stand here in these color combinations.
Well, it's a nice little spot to rest before you climb the ladder anyway.
Yeah,
Oh,
and-
you've got some nice presentations here. What have you
Yes.
got here? You got the lamp, the lens, mineral oil cans, the fuel.
all the story about what the Lady of the Light used to prepare to put in the lamp upstairs every day, climbing this ladder over and over and over again. I can identify with that. But Mrs. Herworth was a remarkable person because she did this with small children, and she was the lighthouse keeper for a number of years.
No
Yes.
kidding.
Okay, we'll
All
have to
right,
let some people
we'll
go by.
go up another level and show you what it's like from the very top. Well, we couldn't go much higher unless we climbed on top of the cupola.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Linda refused to hold her hands out for me to step inside. This is nice up here, Linda.
This is marvelous. On this hot day, this is the place to be. I'd rather be up here than down on the lawn.
Nice little breeze on top of the Bluff Point Lighthouse. I had no idea I was going to be able to climb this high today. You've done it a few times.
A number of times, yes. It keeps me in shape.
What? A couple years ago, did you ever think we'd be here today? You hoped, I know.
I guess I hoped, but I was just going one section at a time. I couldn't think that far down the road because it was overwhelming to me. The second year I started working, I realized I couldn't do this alone, and that's when all the other people you're interviewing today came on board, and without them, this never would have been finished. Everybody did something special, and it's all come together today for us.
You know, I've mentioned it a couple times already today, but I want to reiterate how rough this place was when you first came out here.
It was very rough, but it wasn't the roughness that annoyed me. It was the color combinations. All the
They were
bedrooms
crazy.
they were school bus yellow with black trim. I don't know how you could close your eyes and go to sleep in a room like that. And the living room was a bright, bright blue, including the ceiling. It took 3 coats of paint to cover that.
Really?
But all that woodwork has been scraped down, all the black has been scraped off, and now the antique white's been put on, and it's just, you walk through the door and it's calming to walk in, and it's all just calm. Before you walked in and your nerve endings hurt just from the stress of everything.
Lighthouses are kind of magical, aren't they, for many people? And I know people who travel all over the world to visit lighthouses. There's something about lighthouses.
They get really involved. Last summer we had a couple call from Vermont. They had friends coming to town. Then they were lighthouse buffs, and they said they would give us a special donation if we opened it on a day, because they only had one day to be here. So Roger and I came over and took them through the lighthouse, and gosh, they were so excited. It just made you happy to do it.
It's great, and we've seen in curio shops, in shops all over, and various places that we visited, because Kay and I love to be near where there's water. And you'll see miniature lighthouses, and people collect them and take photographs
And they're so
albums.
charming.
This
Each
one
and every one.
is especially charming.
Of course.
If we only dreamed how many photographs have been taken, how many woodcuts, how many lithographs, how many paintings of this lighthouse.
Well, in your travels today, I'm sure you'll come across Derek Allen's watercolor.
Oh, yes, isn't it beautiful?
And he has graciously given us 80 copies of this watercolor to sell to raise money for the lighthouse. It's dear to he and Helen, and he also granted us permission to put his image on the t-shirts. And so we now have these t-shirts available to raise money for the lighthouse. And they're only $15, and that includes tax.
Right, she's very good, a marketing expert.
And we're going to have
things.
coffee mugs too.
Very dexterous with the paintbrush.
Well, we have to have funds because there's work that needs to be done that I can't do. I can scrape and I can paint, but I can't replace this roof, and I can't replace the mansard roof where the shakes are around the
Is that going to be done?
second story.
Are you thinking about it?
Oh, it's got to be done. We'll be we have some money from the last big, in the '86 when the Clinton County Historical Association took over the lighthouse. They had a big fundraiser, and we have most of that money. And with what we're raising now, we'll soon have enough to do this properly.
That's almost 20 years now.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes. You just don't realize it.
Well, I think today, just having this kind of a commemoration, a celebration, if you will, of the relighting of this Bluff Point Lighthouse will get people talking.
That's
the media
what we
have
want.
been
the
very
words,
good to you.
They have.
I mentioned to Roger when we landed, this is the first time Calvin and I have ever been on Valcour Island.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not a boater. I love to go for boat rides. And I've crossed this lake quite a few times with your husband and you, but I've never set foot on the shores of Valcour Island.
Well,
and now I'm delighted to
it's a wonderful day, yes.
finally be here and just feel the thrill of it all, because I like lighthouses too. So what's yet to be done? You talked about roofs.
The roof needs to be done in the mansard roof, which is the side roof here of the second floor that has the wooden shakes all down it. A lot of those need replacing, and that would have to be contracted out. It's not a volunteer thing. One of the things that almost brings me to tears is the pride I have in this group totally refurbishing the inside of this lighthouse to the tune of less than $1,000.
You've got to be kidding me.
That's just for supplies. Everything else is elbow grease, and we've done it happily. And I'm very proud of that. You know, everybody needs funding. Everybody goes for funding. But this group of people just worked and worked and worked, and we did it on our own. And that's a very important thing to me.
Well,
We don't have the expertise to do the roof or the other part. So then, okay, then we have to ask for money for that. But we're just real proud that we were able to do the inside.
Well, I can tell that you have the passion for it, and with your permission, we'll come back again.
Great.
And I don't know if it'll ever be finished.
Well, like your home. It's
ever?
ongoing,
Yeah.
you know? It's like housework. It waits for you.
But it's become almost like a super hobby for you, hasn't it?
Obsession, Roger would say, is a better word.
Never mind the super hobby.
I've come over here in
You've
the
taken
rain
it to
and
another
rough
level.
boat, and
Well,
Yeah.
Roger was telling us how 100 people walked across the ice near blizzard conditions.
It was awesome that day to stand up here and watch. You know, once a trail is established in the snow, everybody sticks to the trail. So here's this line of people. All I could think of is that story in Alaska when the gold rush and
Oh,
they went
yeah.
up, what is that, Chilkoot
Yeah.
Pass or something?
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I could think of when I watched them come across.
Isn't
But
that
they
great?
were very generous. Everyone gave. We asked if they could give a $2 donation, and so we had a good fundraising of those days we were open. It was very heartwarming.
Isn't it a special view of this very special lake that we have from here, looking over at what's now Clinton Community? A college, sailboats on the lake, people enjoying this wonderful lake. Maybe a little bit too cool to fall in today, but I think the water
I don't know. I think it
temperature-
would feel good right now. I'm so
I think
warm.
you might be right, but
Yeah.
it's nice. There is just enough of a breeze up here on the top of the Bluff Point Lighthouse to make it worthwhile. Is there more to be done with the grounds?
I don't think so. We'll probably leave them natural as is. I wouldn't want to bring in dirt and have more lawn, or, I mean, that's the way the island is. If you hike throughout, it's the stone outcroppings and everything. Another thing from up here, that people that are mountain hikers, on a good day for visibility, which today is not, you can see Polka Moonshine, you can see Lion Mountain, you can see Big Slide, you can see Marcy, you can see Algonquin from up here. And we put this little paper in the window that tells you what you're looking at out of each window,
good.
but it was pointless to put it up today. Jim Bailey had done that a few years ago, designed it out. But today is a little bit too hazy.
Roger said he couldn't even see the other shore when he came over early this morning.
He and his two brothers, it was like that nursery about the three little boys that went off to sea or something in the wooden shoe. You probably know it.
Yeah.
Into the mist or something. But they all returned safely.
That's good. Well, I'm glad we're here today, Linda. Thanks so much. We're going to look at the rest of the
I
place
hope
now.
so. Thank you for coming.
We're delighted.
Turn the camera.
And it's always a nice day when it comes to
Calvin was so serious about clinging to the railing when I was going up, I couldn't get a good look at it. But now that we're down here, gosh, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And now that I know who was responsible for it, but I don't think I know your name.
My name's Heather Finn.
Hey, Heather, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Any day at the lighthouse is great.
Tell me what this looked like before you began.
Well, when I first came here, it was a real dark, almost the black color of what everybody uses to put on their furniture, and I just wanted to see what it looked like underneath. So I started the project. 55 hours later, I had
55 hours?
55. One summer we spent vacation on the island. Good spot as any to be on vacation. And I'd come over a few hours a day and I'd strip it, and next thing you know, I'd be climbing the stairs and I was done.
You started from the bottom and worked your way up?
Yes,
or?
I did. I started from the bottom. We came for a cleaning bee one day and I told Linda I wasn't interested in anything but the stairs. And so she gave it to me and I conquered.
I guess you did. You came and you conquered. Have you ever done furniture finishing before?
I
or
finished dressers and things of that nature, but I've never done stairs.
Not a project this big.
No.
Did any of the parts have to be replaced? No?
No, everything is the original, right from when it was first built to now.
And it feels tremendously sturdy.
Oh, yes, yeah. Whoever was the person that did this built a beautiful stairs and did a wonderful job.
What? She just showed a picture to Calvin. What was that?
I think it was a picture of when I first started, and it was almost black when it first started to be cleaned. So, but it was fun. It was a couple stairs at a time, and it was just a nice project to do.
Actually, the building was pretty sturdy, even though it had been in ruin for a long time.
It's a very sturdy building, even though we came in and the walls were yellow and the trim was black. Just a little bit of TLC, and I brought it back to what it looked like, or tried to look like before.
Just a lot of TLC.
Yeah, and a good bunch of people that want to do, and it was odd because we were never all together. The only time we're together is when we have a function.
Yeah.
You know, everybody came and did their own thing at their own time, and we all got done at the same time.
I love the curves.
Oh, I know, it's beautiful. You sit there and you wonder what craftsmanship it was back then in the 1800s. Of course, it was all hand done. Back then, we didn't have what we have now. So whoever was the talented persons, they did a really nice job.
Well, you're pretty talented too, and we're delighted that you did. I think we ought to have a little plaque somewhere on it.
Oh, I don't know. I always say, you know, I'm the stripper, but with this body, I have to do one.
I love it, and if you think I'm going there, you're wrong, lady. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great day. Some people outside this area may not be familiar with this part of North Country history, if you will, the Battle of Plattsburgh and Benedict Arnold, and as being such a significant battle. We've talked about it many times, of course, and we hope you get a chance to see the full explanation of it on Hometown Cable sometime. But we're going back to October of 1776, and if you want a significant date in American history, that's the year that would do it for you. This is a very nice display. As a matter of fact, everything that they have here is displayed beautifully. You've seen or heard perhaps about the Royal Savage, which was involved, of course, in the Battle of Plattsburgh, in the Battle of Valcour. We talk about the Battle of Lake Champlain, the Battle of Plattsburgh later on, in the War of 1812, and now we go back to the 1700s for this battle. The Royal Savage then became a rather famous landmark in a local restaurant, which is now closed, and much of that is gone. But we do have the memories. We have the Philadelphia, which was raised and is in the Smithsonian, and we have other remnants of boats that were involved that have been raised down through the years. Here's a nice description of the engagement on Lake Champlain. Hi, Linda.
This is
Are you back again?
my room to Benedict Arnold in the Battle of Valcour.
Talk a little bit about it and how you put it together and how significant it is.
Believe me, don't say Smithsonian in this room. It's just having read the book about the Battle of Valcour and Benedict Arnold's life. I'm impressed with what he did here and in Saratoga. And since you're standing in a room that looks right out on where the battle took place, I thought it would be nice if I had things that pertain to that. This is Ernie Haas's painting of the Philadelphia sinking. You know, that didn't happen, the painting didn't happen the night of the battle, but it's significant to show that battle scene. And then in the 30s, Mr. Haglund was up here, I think, building a bridge somewhere, and he was diving in this area for like the Royal Savage and artifacts, and he came across the gunboat Philadelphia, completely intact. I'm sure you've heard the story, and now the Philadelphia is in Washington, D.C. And so we have, thank you to Frank Papps, the Burlington newspapers telling the story. I have them all there laminated. If anybody wants to take the time, they are interesting to read, and the local people that helped raise it. And in that board over there, the one picture with the cannonball, this is actually at the Smithsonian, and that's the cannonball that was embedded in the boat, probably helped, one of the reasons that made it sink. This is on the boat also, that's a little swivel gun, I think. This is Mr. Haglund's son, who came back up here a couple of years ago on the anniversary of his father's death. And apparently, his ashes are out here in the bay. And the son came up to cast flowers out on the anniversary of his father's death. And a Mr. Miller, I believe, came, and we had a cannon on our front lawn, and the cannon was shot off also. This is a painting that if somebody came and really looked at it, you can see where it says Indian Point. There was an encampment there. So people that are tenting over there have their tent in the same places. What else is special? These are, you know, newspaper things or articles written. That map was actually drawn just a few days after the battle to show the way the boats were positioned. And then I want to develop this wall over here.
Behind us, we're going to give Calvin a little chance to turn around.
As y'all can probably remember, they brought up that exploded cannon a couple years ago, big event, big media event, and the Valcour Bay Research has a grid work underwater that's actually laid out, and as they find the artifacts, they're marked in the grid, and they're reconstructing this battle. And they know where the Philadelphia was, they know where they found the cannon, so that gave the position, I think, of the York boat, because that's the boat that cannon was on, but I'm not real good at remembering names. And so the research is ongoing, and they'll be able to reconstruct this battle by the sizes of the cannonballs and where they're finding them. They found a sword. In this tombstone, this is a rubbing from a tombstone. There was a young soldier that died because of the exploding cannon, and his wife Molly erected this tombstone in his memory. And it says, died of an exploded cannon on the Lake Champlain, the 11th day of October, 1776. Isn't it funny how the 11th keeps coming up?
It is truly
The Battle of
bizarre. We've thought
Plattsburgh.
about that several times in the past, but this story is a little bit magical, how it unfolded, how this tombstone was found, and how we got that information back here. It's just beautiful.
The
isn't it?
research, and like Ed Scallon is doing tons of research, and every little tidbit fits into a puzzle. So we'll have a better picture days to come.
So you got that nice little Battle of Valcour room here. It's a little warm up here today as we're celebrating the relighting of the Valcour Lighthouse, the Bluff Point Lighthouse on Valcour Island, on a very warm, it's not even technically summer yet, is it?
No, it's
On June
a sticky
11th,
day.
2005. It's a warm and muggy day, so you can't say no sweat today because
Thank
we've all
goodness
been
for the
doing
breeze.
that. But there is a little bit of breeze, and we felt it when we were up top, and that was very nice. And there are a couple more rooms up here that we'd like to look at if you don't mind.
I don't mind, but could I ask you to come downstairs? Tony Tyrrell is here, and he's the caretaker of the island working for DEC. And he wants us to gather together. Apparently he has something or some information for us, and he thinks we're all going to be excited about it. So if we could go down and do that.
We're old, but we can still take a little bit of excitement, so let's do it.
Okay.
Oh, you have to wear those
I have to wear it now?
now.
Now.
Yeah.
All right, we're on. Tony, what's your last name?
Tony Terrell.
We're delighted to have you
Out
here.
here from 1969,
Have you really?
and this says the perfect gift.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
10 years ago, I met a person who was the first civilian resident at the lighthouse. In 1946, they bought the lighthouse from the U.S. government. They had two lawyers from New York, Mr. Cogan and Mr. Riley. And they, Mr. Cogan, Charlie Cogan, 10 years ago, entrusted me with this to turn it over when the time was right. And I can think of nobody more deserving than this bunch of people, and especially you, Linda, the lighthouse lady. And this is yours from a donation of Charlie Cogan to me, and I'm passing it along to you.
She's shaking.
I'm
That's
shaking.
that's a good sign, Tony.
If you read the little thing,
Can you hold this while I read it? Gordy can read it.
Somebody can read it. All right, read it.
Spyglass, used at Lighthouse at Valcour Island about 1936 by Charles M. Cogan Sr. to track movements of the boats Henry's Farm and John Manley on the Peru dock, donated on 6/2/98 by Charles M. Cogan Jr. and family Timothy Cogan from San Francisco, children Charles Pyatt, Michael Andrew, Alexandra Basia Cogan, and Elizabeth Cogan of Maryland. Signed, Charles M. Cogan. Is there more written inside?
There's just instructions on the back, his phone number, and what I gather, that this is his original
Oh my gosh.
spyglass used by the lighthouse keeper, because when they bought it, there was all sorts of artifacts here.
I'm just going to tuck this in there, but I want that back.
Yes,
I just
yes,
have to
ma'am.
look at
Did
this.
you have any clue that this
I never knew this existed or anything
Wow.
else.
I can see it through the bubble wrap.
I'm a nervous wreck here. Oh my gosh, you see pictures
Look
of
at this.
these.
Oh,
my
look at this.
gosh, that's
Is this
beautiful.
cool? All right, take a look. Be a spy. Take a look, Linda. Linda with the purple gloves.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Can you see?
Tony.
I told
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Can you check on Roger across the lake? We'd like to make sure the boat hasn't sunk. Isn't that fabulous?
That is awesome. Just think
That probably
Mrs. Hurwitz
extends
maybe have looked through here. This is beautiful. Oh my, Tony, how could you part with it?
Huh?
How could you part with it?
It belongs to the Clinton County Historical Association.
Oh,
that beautiful?
we will be so
What a
proud
treasure.
of this.
Once again, hometown cable was there. Calvin
There, for this
Castine
event.
has captured so many
It's come
historic
home
moments.
to the rightful place.
We will have to have a special box to put this in and show it off at the museum.
Yeah.
Now it makes you wonder what other treasures they found.
Oh, you never know. You never know.
Tony, this has been a historic occasion in more ways than one. You're pretty familiar with this place, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I've been here for
Since 69?
69. Yeah, 35, 34 years.
Does it please you to see this restoration taking place?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Beyond
It's
words, huh?
Absolutely beautiful. They've taken this absolutely forgotten, run-down building and just transformed it.
Yeah.
Tony's
I know.
been a big help too in getting us help with the shot camp and the boys in the Schuyler Falls school, and he brings them over and I leave a list and he gets them to do all the work.
There,
And
you mean you got the honey-do list that extends to you, huh?
everybody
tough work.
works together. It's
Yeah.
been wonderful.
It is a teamwork. We just took a look at the railing and talk about tender, loving care just to rub that railing
They
down
have
and get
done
it.
a remarkable job.
All the painting and all the rooms, and to discover that beautiful blue-gray paint up there and
Yeah.
the landing.
And the information that Claudia's bringing out with the families and the people that have, worked here. The story on Mrs. Hurwitz. That's wonderful.
It's all great. We're going to talk a lot more, but thanks to Tony, we just had a really cool moment here on a
Cool.
warm
Wonderful.
day, huh?
Wonderful.
Thanks again, Tony. We love it.
Oh, yes.
The board at the CCHA will be so thrilled.
I
Thank
wish
you.
Roger was here, too. But
Yeah.
that's...
Yeah, we'll show it to him on the
Make
way
him
back on
cry
the boat.
later.
Well, now that the formal part is finished, Tony, we can shoot the bull, you and me, for a minute. What does a caretaker do in a place like this?
Well, we patrol. There's campsites. There's
Oh, yeah.
about 28 campsites. We have to patrol those, issue permits, and the trail system all needs to be upgraded, brushed out, and mowed. And I think this year they're going to stop the mowing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Oh.
Yeah. So I have no idea what's going to happen to the trails. We'll have to figure out some way to keep them open.
Yeah. But how did you get hooked up with this duty in the first place all those years ago?
I bought some insurance from someone,
There's always a story, isn't there?
and in making out the insurance, they found out I was in college, didn't have a job. I was in the Navy, and the question was, can you run a boat? And I said, yes, I can run a boat. And that's how I got the job.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So every
We
day.
came out years and years ago. We had a rental boat, which almost sank.
Oh no.
And I was, for at least 2 years, coming out and just burning the garbage, pick everything up, and keep the campsites in good shape.
Yeah.
And from there, it went to work crews and bridges on the island and all sorts of things. So
But I don't think you ever dreamed in 1969 what we'd be doing here today, did you?
No, never.
These people are amazing.
Never. This was Sleepy Hollow. It sort of everybody had know it was there, but had forgotten it, other than the local people.
Yeah.
And
Well,
beautiful campsites.
Thank goodness all this, there's been a rejuvenation in the people's feelings about local history
Yes.
here, and this has
Yes,
been a
it
huge
is.
part of it for a long, long time out here. A landmark.
It has seemed to explode in the last 10 years.
Yeah, don't you love it?
Yes, I do, very much.
Well, especially since
It's a
you're
long
part
time.
of it for many, many years.
It's a long time coming.
Are you
It's
a North
way
Country
overdue.
native, Tony?
Yes, I am. I'm from Port Henry originally, and moved up here, went to college, got a job teaching in Peru, and that's where I settled down.
Oh, now I remember
Yeah.
the teaching part in
the
Peru.
teaching part in Peru, yep.
When you get old, there's certain gaps in your memory. Now you, thank goodness you filled it in. Port Henry's had some bad weather.
Yes, they have.
We're recording this on the 11th of June in 2005, and those flash floods they had the last
Bridges
couple
out.
days.
Oh, yeah.
Route 9 did not look too good on the television.
Yeah, that still doesn't look good. Yep.
So you may not be visiting this weekend. Tony, thanks so much for
Oh, you're
all
more
your
than
job.
welcome, sir.
You've taken good care of it so far.
Thank you.
It's been an exciting day in so many ways. We finally pried Claudia Hornby away from that beautiful spyglass.
Thank you.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it's lovely. I can't wait to find out more about it. I'm going to start looking on the internet as soon as I get home.
Did you know about that little treasure before he did that?
I had no idea. I really didn't. I've been
It's like he
looking
can
for
keep
artifacts.
secrets pretty well.
I think so.
Isn't that great, having been the caretaker for all those years and having come upon that? Where is Antiques Roadshow when we need them?
Exactly.
They got a little provenance, but you're going to add to that by checking it out and see if it's in any of the old logs. I know some people other people who aren't connected now with the restoration of this Bluff Point Lighthouse who have done research over the years because it's generated quite a bit of interest.
Oh, it really has.
Now you have become so much involved. What's been your role so far?
Well, basically, my interest is the history of the lighthouse and the lighthouse keepers, and so I've been doing research on the building of the lighthouse, its construction, trying to look back and find different information about the keepers and the families and what their lives were like, and developing displays to enrich the visitors' experience of the lighthouse so that they know a little bit more than just
Is
the
this
four
something
walls.
you had expertise in before, or you is this learn as you go, or what is it?
Well, I'm a former English teacher, and I
Well,
also
that
taught
makes-
history, so that helped a
makes
little bit.
Perfect sense to me.
Yeah, once a teacher, always a teacher, and so this wasn't too much different than making a lesson plan. I just love to share what I've learned with people, and I really enjoy going in there and talking to them and telling them some of the things I've
It's a
learned.
good place, a pleasant place. I was wondering what the ruins were behind Calvin when we stepped out back here.
Well, this was a storage shed that was built as at the same time as the lighthouse, and there are pictures of it, but in 2003 we had a lot of snow and the building collapsed, and so we had to remove it. But we found a number of artifacts that belong to the families who lived here and the lighthouse keepers and so on, which are on display inside the museum.
How many lighthouse keepers were there down through the years?
7 lighthouse keepers, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And a woman. At least
There
one?
was actually one woman who was a lighthouse keeper for several years, and another one who was a lighthouse keeper for about a year, I think, or a year and a half. I don't have the exact dates in my head, but the one lighthouse keeper, Mrs. Herworth, was here for many years and did the job by herself after her husband passed away.
She had children here, raised a family
She had
here on the
children
island.
were born here on the island. She raised a family. One of her daughters was married here in January. Can you believe that? Can you imagine coming out here for a wedding in January during a storm?
Hardy souls.
Hardy souls indeed, absolutely.
People came out here this past winter, I heard, across the ice.
I understand
Were
they
you,
did.
You weren't one of those, I can tell.
No, I wasn't. I was in Florida. I'm a snowbird.
You know, that makes perfect sense to me. Well, we do have a perfect day, and we would love it if you would take us inside and show us some of your displays. Would you do that?
Oh, certainly, I'd be happy to.
Let's do it. We got pictures on the wall. What are they?
Okay, well, these are portraits of the second keeper, Major Herworth, and his wife, Mary Herworth. These had been in the Historical Association for quite a while, and one of our restorers, one of our people found them and had them framed. So it's really kind of neat that they're back here in what was probably their living room, looking out on all these people going through what was their home for many years.
They're helping history to repeat itself, aren't
Yes,
we, huh?
exactly. And I was able to find out quite a bit about the Herworths. Their stay here is fairly well documented in old newspapers. He was a Civil War veteran, and he had a bullet wound in his kidney. He still had the bullet in his kidney, and he carried that with him for his whole life. And frequently, Civil War veterans were given jobs as lighthouse keepers during this period of time. So he came and was here for several years, but he passed away because of his wounds, and his wife took over. And so they're actually, the two gravestones here are in Gilliland Cemetery down the road, and that's where they're buried. So,
Did you have trouble finding them?
no, actually, because there was an article in the Press Republican that spoke of when he was originally buried somewhere else, and when she passed away, she was buried in the Gilliland Cemetery, and he was disinterred and moved to lie next to her. So I thought that was really sweet that the two of them are together again. Yes, exactly. So he received a lot of commendations for being a very effective lighthouse keeper and running a good ship. And he loved people would come over to visit the lighthouse in the summertime, and he would sit out on the step and he would tell them war stories. And he would love what was going on today. I mean, he would love to just be talking to people about the lighthouse and about what his life was like and so on. So that's kind of neat.
Like, what, 10 or 15 years after the Civil War?
Yes, 1871. So, just a short time after the war, yes. And the only thing we know about the first keeper is that his name was Waite, W-A-I-T. We haven't been able to find anything, but I've been digging around, and I know that there was a family in Isle La Motte with that name. And I'm trying to find out information to see if I can connect him, because I do know that he lived here after he was lighthouse keeper. There was a Waite family that had a farm here for a while on Valcour.
You know, as always, it's possible that since people watch the show all over northern New York on the various cable systems, somebody would have information for you, Claudia. How would they get a hold of you?
Oh, well, I'm in the phone book. We're Peter and Claudia Hornby in the phone book, and we would love any information, or just contact the Historical Society and say, we've got information on the lighthouse. I would love old pictures of Valcour Island, because that's the next thing we're going to do some research on, old camps, memories of camping on Valcour. So if someone would like to write to me or, contact me through the Historical Association, that would be wonderful.
Because it has been used for all those purposes for a long
Oh,
time.
yes, absolutely.
We have some photographs.
We do have some photographs, yes, and we also have photographs of what this looked like as a camp. This room was totally different. The walls were painted blue, the woodwork was black, there was electricity. It's very interesting to see what this looked like in the old days.
What kinds of things do you have on these other walls here?
The wall over here
To Calvin's right.
is basically information about the keepers, about their salaries, how much money they made, which wasn't very much, less than $500 a year for the keeper of the Bluff Point Light. We have some typical keepers' uniforms. Unfortunately, these are the only pictures of lighthouse keepers we have, except for this little picture of Mrs. Herworth.
Calvin is looking over there, but we'll look back over that later.
That's okay. So that's basically what this information is all about. It's very interesting to find out what the lightkeepers were paid back in the old days.
$500 a year.
Yes, and they had a lot of their food supplied for them, so that the food, and of course their lodging, so it wasn't quite as bad as it seems. And they often had a garden over here to, grow their own vegetables, and maybe a cow so that they could have milk and butter. So it was very much a hard life.
Now, you said that when you tore down that storage shed, or it fell down, that you found some things.
Yes, we did. Some of the things that we found are over here in the display case.
Calvin is just looking at, what are we looking at, the salaries? Oh, yes, well, it is. Somebody in Whitehall only made $320. I don't know what that was all about. And some of them were down in the 200 range. Isn't that interesting? With the highest being, what, around 700, I think.
Sure, some of those lighthouse keepers may have had assistants that they had to oversee and so on.
All right, you've got a little display table right in the middle here with some very fun-looking things there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I'll start right here. One of the bricks of the lighthouse, all the bricks were made by the Queen City Brick Company in Winooski.
Oh.
Over here, paintbrush. The lighthouse keepers were responsible for painting all the outside, exterior, and interior of the lighthouse, men or women. So we don't know whether that was a paintbrush or whether it was something used to in some other part of the work, but we found that. We found an old rake, some old tools. These are pieces of trim from the windows up on the top. We found a bottle. This is a bottle of Edison battery oil. This was used, and the old batteries were like a big crock, and they had the battery acid, I believe it was inside of it, and then they poured the oil on top to keep it from boiling or whatever. So this is an old Edison battery oil bottle that one of our visitors found last summer.
The oil floated right on the top.
Yes. Now, we know the Hurwiths had children who lived here. I'm speculating that maybe these shoes were from that Hurworth family, but we did find these. Linda Harwood took a couple of them and polished them and cleaned them up to bring them back a little bit, but we found all of these, and these look like a pair of rubbers that we found. Clothespins, scissors. We found coal because the lighthouse was heated with coal stoves, and the coal was brought over once a year at the beginning of the season in 50-pound bags. And the lighthouse keeper got 50 pounds of coal whether he needed it or not. Sometimes they would have to write and say, please don't send us any more coal, we are full up. Over here in the corner, you can see some fossils. They're called maclerite fossils, and these are fossils that are found around the island. And you can also, if you look carefully around the outside, the windows outside, you can see some of these fossils actually in the window, in the stuff that frames the windows, the stone that goes around the windows. You can actually look up and find a couple of those. They were giant snails. So that was interesting. These pottery shards, none of these that we know of were actually lighthouse service pottery. The lighthouse service had its own pottery with its own mark on it that was issued. A full set of dinnerware was issued to the lighthouse keepers. But these are shards that we found that may have belonged to the families or some of the people that were in the camp later on. Some old bottles. We haven't figured out what this is yet, but it was also out there. We thought it might be some kind of a funnel or something used.
Who knows?
Handling the oil, clothespins.
Clothespins you can't find anymore, but
No.
I was brought up with those, so I'm very familiar with them.
Yes, those are the good old-fashioned kind that don't fall apart. So these are just some of the things that we found when we were going through that. Glassware, all the things you'd expect to find when a family living on an island.
Okay.
One of the other panels over here tells the story of the Raboffs. The Raboff family was the last family to own the lighthouse. They used it as a summer camp, as a guest cottage for their summer camp, which was south of here on Valcour Island. And the Raboffs basically were very instrumental in the fact that we are here today, because when the state purchased the property from the Raboffs, they made it part of the agreement that this lighthouse would be preserved and that their conservation easement would be given to the Historical Association to preserve the lighthouse. And it's just a wonderful gift that they left to us and all the residents of our Champlain Valley, that we now have a lighthouse we can go through and see what life was like.
Yeah, other people have heard about the lighthouse on Valcour. before today, but I think this weekend we'll really put the spotlight on it, don't you?
I hope so. I hope so. You know, when we first started coming over here, the lighthouse was abandoned and windows were broken, people had broken in. It was very messy. And even when we started restoring it, we still had problems with vandalism. But once we put the sign out that said this is a historic lighthouse and we're restoring it, people have respected it. We've had no vandalism or anything out here since that time.
Isn't that
we're
nice?
really delighted. We're happy that the people who visit respect it and enjoy it. So,
Do you believe that you've learned some things that weren't public knowledge before in your own research?
I think
We'll uncover a little tidbit every now and again.
well, not so much because I'm not that far back in my research. I'm still using some research that other people have found, for example. But I have found out some things about like military records of the lighthouse keepers and so on that have been interesting to me. For example, with Major Herworth, and so that, you know, I have found some of his military records and that he served with distinction, and those things to me are interesting. Little tidbits of history and things like this that allow you to have a glimpse into their life. Those are the tidbits that are meaningful to me, you know, and to speculate about.
And thanks to the internet, there are more and more resources, so you can
Definitely, yes.
you can really get on there and look around.
I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to actually getting one of the keeper's logs, which I know the Historical Association has, and reading about the day-to-day activities of the keeper. That's going to be a lot of fun.
You know, those little logs and legends were fairly mundane to the people who kept them at the time, but in retrospect,
Oh, yes.
it gives us a slice of their life.
Oh,
doesn't it?
exactly. It really does. And just to imagine what it must have been like to live out here all summer. It must have been idyllic in some ways. You were off by yourself. You had a beautiful setting. Other ways, I think it was pretty hard. You know, they didn't have a lot of the modern conveniences. They had no electricity. So I think really they had a hard life. They had a lot of work to do, but also I think they had a good life. I think, particularly when you see people who
Great to
stayed
delve
all the
into it a
time.
little bit.
Yes, it
Yeah,
really
isn't
is.
All right, what else have we got? We'll move to another room in just a moment. We would be remiss if we didn't talk to the Clarks, the famous lighthouse owners. How are you, Mrs. Clark?
We're just
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Gordy. How's yourself?
You made your dad swim all the way across?
You're doggone right. You got to keep him young.
Oh, boy.
That's what keeps him in shape, other than chasing up and down, taking that care of those two lights.
You sure picked the weather today, Gordy.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't this fantastic?
Perfect, just perfect.
Perfect day.
What is there about lighthouses that we love?
I don't know.
It's amazing,
I
isn't it?
wonder.
It is.
There's been an attraction for you guys forever and
Yeah, I
ever and
know.
ever.
It has
I
been,
know.
yeah.
We're old pros at it.
Yep.
Have you been here many times to this one?
Actually, we came a few different
times.
occasions. My last time was with our friend Admiral Bowman, who was recently passed away, unfortunately, this past February. And we came and had a nice tour with Linda and Roger and a couple of, actually his daughter and another couple of friends of theirs. So we had a real private, up close and personal tour. So it was really nice to have, you know, to be able to have him over here. Because as far as I'm concerned, he was the one that said, "Hey, you guys, what do you think about putting that light up in that tower?" So we give all the credit to Admiral Bowman. He's our mentor, our lighthouse man. So.
Well, we want to thank you for agreeing to do a little taping tonight for the ceremony when Kelvin's doing the barber shoppers and I'm over at the Strand
There
and
you
we're
go. Wow.
in 15 different directions. But doesn't it
So much
please
going
you?
on.
Doesn't it make you happy to see the light back on in the
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
lighthouse?
absolutely.
As it did in your own.
That's right. It's a victory for all of Lake Champlain. You know, we got half the lights lit now, so we got 5 more to do. So we gotta keep plugging till we get all 10 lit.
5 more?
5 more.
5
I
more to
lost
go.
track, you know.
We're halfway there.
Are we half lit or half wit? I'm not sure.
I want to take another minute to answer your question. What do we love about lighthouses? Well, what it is lighthouses give back to us. As I think I'm trying to remember, quote the person who quoted it. I can't remember the man's name, but they said that lighthouses are the most altruistic of all edifices because they give back more than what was given to them, more or less, because all the countless people that have, had their lives saved, just not so much in today's world, but in the past, you know what I'm saying?
But it's brought, look at the volunteers that have come out here.
That's right.
We just talked to the lady who did the railing going upstairs.
Yeah, I did too. Heather.
55 hours of rubbing that thing and wearing a special mask, and it was black.
What was that finish that she said she couldn't remember?
It was very dark, black, some kind of varnish or something they had
Just
put
ask
on.
Roger, he would know.
She
It's a
just
nice
kept working
finish.
and working and looking at it.
Beautiful, beautiful,
It's
yeah.
really great nice to see that volunteerism. It's
When Linda and her crew started coming out here, I just shook my head and said, I don't know if they can do it, because it was almost a one-woman band there for a long time until they enlisted the services of more volunteers, and now,
And they're happy to do it.
once the bandwagon starts rolling, people jump
there's
aboard.
no stopping it, no stopping it
That's
now.
for sure,
So I
Gordon.
hope it can continue. I hope that 150 years from now, there's people here,
same interest.
and still have that interest that there is right now, currently. So let's hope
Hope you
that.
get to view Calvin's tape or DVD.
DVD,
At
that's
that time.
right, that's right. We're Calvin and I were just talking the other day. I said, that must be the ultimate. He said, no, not yet. He said, there's still coming, but DVD is definitely an improvement over video, that's for sure.
It sure is. Well, we're so delighted to have the lighthouse, because the name Clark is synonymous with lighthouses here in the North
Thank you.
Country.
Thank you.
Look at his shirt.
That's
Look at
right.
the shirt.
That's
I'll shake your hand, love.
George Clifford. That's and Sid Couchy. That's their design. That's on the cover of George's book that he wrote.
I remember
And,
that.
and he took, like I said, basically the main lighthouses that would represent the ones on the lake.
So 5 more to go, huh? Maybe we'll get
Keeping
together
count.
again.
He's keeping count, Gordy.
Thanks so much for coming out here
Our
today,
pleasure.
guys.
It's our
Thanks
pleasure.
again for manning the camera tonight. That means a lot to us.
Okay, we hope we don't disappoint.
You won't.
Okay.
It's amazing. We change gears and move to other rooms.
Yes.
So what have you got in here? You like this room, don't you?
I like this room. This is the keeper's room originally, or the watch room, and the keeper used this room, probably had a desk in here, some bookshelves and so forth, and used this to keep all of the records that he had to keep for the lighthouse. How many boats he saw going by, when he lighted the lamp, when he turned it out, how much oil he used, things like that were all entered into the keeper's log. And again, if he didn't do a good job, he lost his job, because the lighthouses were inspected regularly. One of the things that was mentioned earlier were the curtains up in the lighthouse. And
Oh yes, we saw those little hooks up there and that little sign on
that's
the top.
right. Well,
what was that all
Well,
about?
the lighthouse lenses were like giant magnifying glasses in a sense, and they had to protect them from the sunlight. So every morning after he extinguished the light, he'd have to put up these curtains, and during the daytime when the sun was out, the curtains were up over the light to protect the light. This kept the putty that held the lens from drying out, prevented a possible fire when you pulled a magnifying glass and focused that sunlight, or harm the lamp. So they served a very good purpose, and they were very simple curtains that went up, and all lighthouses had them.
Never knew that till today.
No, I never learned that. Talking about tidbits, that's one of the tidbits that I learned. I said, what are those hooks all about? And finally discovered it on a website and learned all about it there. Here I've tried to explain a little bit about the construction of the lighthouse over the years, and the architectural style with the mansard roof and the dormers and so on. I've shown a little bit about how the Valcour Lighthouse is very similar to the Colchester Reef Lighthouse, which is over in Vermont at the Shelburne Museum.
Oh yes.
So I've tried to make people aware of what the lighthouse, some of the peculiarities of it, some of the really interesting things about the way it's constructed. This room probably, if you take out the electrical features, is probably pretty much the way all the rooms looked, with the paneling, the tongue and groove paneling would have been stained, a natural wood stain. The walls would be painted white. The floors were often natural wood or painted gray. So this room kind of reflects a little bit of what the original looked like. Over here we have some pictures of what the lighthouse looked like during the time it was a camp.
Oh boy.
And you can see that this, in the corner of that picture is a sink. This room was, during its last days as a camp, had been turned into a bathroom. The sink was mounted right over there. There were several holes in the floor that we had to plug up. There was actually a shower head in here. They must have had some kind of a drain in here at one time. So there was a regular bathroom in here back in the days when it was a camp. Another thing that you can see up there in the corner of this picture, changes over the year, which talks about the different changes in the illumination of the lighthouse. And speaking of artifacts that we have left over, this is the original plate that was on top of the pedestal where the original Fresnel lens was. And,
no kidding.
And this would be the bottom side of it, and on the top side of it, the lens and the lantern were placed on here. The Haynes mineral oil lantern would have been screwed onto here. This would have been on that pedestal. And then the beautiful Fresnel lens that we no longer have was fastened on top of this. So that's the only thing we really have left from the original lantern, unfortunately.
Was this in the building when you...
This has been on here ever since the light was decommissioned, but they had to remove it to put the new lamp up because it was so much bigger. So this is probably the only other original artifact that we have from the lens. If any of your viewers have any little strange triangular shaped pieces of glass that they'd be curious about, it would be wonderful to have a little piece of glass from the original lens.
Wouldn't it though?
Some people I have heard have found them on Valcour Island.
Oh my,
So
my.
maybe, who knows?
You never know. Maybe we can bring them out of the woodwork and
yes.
have them respond to you.
Sure, and any of your viewers who might have had an old house might know what that is.
I have no clue.
No clue? Okay. Well, you may have noticed that down the basement there's a large cistern.
Yes.
Well, if all around the lower level of the mansard roof were gutters. And the gutter system, if I could just step over here for a minute and show you, the gutters drained into the downspout and were connected down here to a pipe that went into the cistern down in the cellar. So that when it rained, the water would come down and be funneled into the cistern. Now if the cistern got full, open the door, and the water would come out. They were clever. And this was the water supply, the water collection system that was used in the lighthouse. So
That's wonderful.
water
I
all
had
around.
no idea when I was looking at that.
It's-
What
yeah.
the heck is that thing?
I think they found it down in the cellar. There's a lot of different things down in the cellar that have the original doors. You can see right in this little picture. I don't know if Calvin can get a picture of it, but those were the original doors, the double doors with panels on them, and those are still down below. And if you'd like to get a look at what the camp looked like before we redid it, it was very colorful. This room was pale green and bright yellow. There's still a little tiny square of bright yellow paint up in the corner there that's peeling off.
Isn't that amazing? There was so much work to be done.
Oh,
There still
it
is a
really
lot of work
was.
to be
Oh,
done,
yes.
but you've come a long way.
We feel this year that it's really kind of come together. This is the first year we felt, phew, we've got it close to where we want it. We still have lots of little things we want to do, and there's it's ongoing. I mean, when we look around, we see other things that need to be done. And that's one of the reasons why we try to maybe collect a little money to help support our effort, because all that paint.
You don't have to be shy about
all that paint costs money.
You can understand the need for that.
Yes,
And
yes.
so many people came out here one at a time, two at a time, and worked whenever they got a chance.
Oh, yes,
A lot of it
yes.
was done privately. The public was not made aware of that, but that's why today is a good day to tell people.
Well, that's wonderful. We're happy for the opportunity. We really are. That's great.
How many hundreds of hours do you say?
Oh, I can't even imagine.
You don't keep your own log.
I've probably put in several hundred myself, and I'm one of the small volunteers, one of the smaller pieces of it, because a lot of this I've been able to do at home and do research, which is fairly easy when you compare it to stripping stairways and scraping paint and doing some of the hard physical labor that a lot of people
It
have
all
done.
counts and it all shows.
Oh, it really does. And we're so grateful to everybody who's worked on
Well,
this.
we thank you so much for talking
Thank you.
with us
It's been
today.
wonderful. It's been fun.
great for us.
Oh, good. I've enjoyed it. I
We'll
love
do
your
it
show.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you. It takes a whole village to raise a lighthouse, get the light going again. And
It sure
boy,
does.
you've had a lot of volunteers, a lot of unsung heroes.
We've had some wonderful people. I hate to say Herman's wonderful, but he is. Herman came out one day to help with his wife Diane,
Oh, they never let you go, Herm.
I know.
They never let you go. They get you out here and they got you, baby.
He was painting in one room, and Diane scraped down a whole door and a doorway, I believe, that day. And Herman got the passion, and he spent 55 hours, I think, last summer out here.
Did you really, Herm? 55 hours?
I was awarded with this T-shirt.
Well, you know.
We had the good fortune to have the Mariah Shop Camp carry over the sheetrock.
I heard about
and they put the sheetrock up. But then we didn't have an expert to tape the sheetrock. And somebody special sent us Herman.
You've
and
done that before, haven't you, buddy boy?
Yes.
Herman taped all 4 rooms up there, sanded them, made a heck of a mess. And then
You don't sand without making a mess.
No, you can't.
he painted them all. He stripped out the wiring for us because we wanted to bring it back to the
Oh, I forgot that.
the 1900s.
When did they put wiring in here?
At some point when it was in private ownership, they put
private
a
ownership.
generator down below, I believe.
Oh, is that
So
what
they
the
had
deal was?
power for Ray Boff's camp and this. And so that was kind of unsightly to have all that wiring, so Herman took it all out. And we took all the doors off upstairs.
Right.
Uh,
Brought them down in the basement.
I had an awful time one day trying to get those doors off. You know, you take that little pin out, struggle and struggle and struggle. And finally I said, Herman, can you do this? I can't do this. And then I left. And 2 minutes later, he came in the room and he got the door off. I said, how did you do that?
Magic.
Well, they're special. They didn't have a pin that dropped in. They only have a half pin. So all you do is
Oh,
lift the
come
door
on.
up.
Come on.
You just raise the door up and it comes right off. No screwing.
Nobody
Amazing.
told me about that.
I know.
Yeah, he made some
Did
comment
you know it
about...
automatically, or did you?
Well, after trying to get all the screws out, which were covered with paint, you know, and it was an endless, tedious job, I said, there got to be an easier way. They just lift it up.
So it's because he's lazy, that's why he figured that out.
Oh,
Whereas
mark
I
that
struggle
down.
for hours. And then he said something about, though, that's why women get minimum wage somewhere.
Oh, I think he stepped over the line.
I think
there.
I swatted him with a broom on that one.
So you saved some of the original doors.
They're all downstairs.
All of them.
We just
For example,
thought,
that's not an original door?
oh yeah,
That's the original door.
upstairs.
Oh, the ones from upstairs, okay.
Just to make the going through the rooms an easier flow. And we're going to use the closets to put items in and then put plexiglass over it so you can look at them but not touch. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but down the
We
road.
learned that there were a lot of modifications made in here over the years, and you are trying to restore it back to a certain time period.
Yeah,
So everything had to go.
right, yeah.
I mean, there's sinks and corners and wiring fixtures and all kinds of stuff. I can't imagine what this looked like with all those crazy colors in here.
Well, I haven't told Herman yet, don't listen. This is his next project, is to get rid of that. Because that's not the original. I have the original at my house. It was just a big metal rectangular one, and it was in that shed. And before the
really?
shed fell down, I asked Roger to please bring it home. And I can't remember if it was Roger or the shop camp, but somebody brought it back to the mainland.
Save the
And
sink.
I've got it, yeah. Some people throw out the kitchen sink, or is it the baby in the bathwater? I don't know.
So this was a later addition, and that's pretty old too, you know?
Well, the original, she had to pump the water up from the cistern.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. We saw the part of the cistern collection system. A lot of the old houses, I
Yeah.
don't know if Calvin's house had a cistern in it, did it? Yeah? Many of the houses I've lived in my youth had cisterns in the pump in the kitchen and the
Yeah.
pump out front.
Right.
Yeah.
You pumped the rainwater up to do dishes and stuff, and you went out in front and filled a pail for the rest of it. We were somewhere yesterday at a railroad station that's being restored at Moore's Junction, and they had a crock, water crock in there. Remember the old crocks? And I had one in my schoolhouse when I was a little boy. Mm-hmm. It just
Yeah.
all
Press
flooded.
the button.
Yeah. Oh, she got it. And she's
I'm not
young.
as old as
She's
you are,
young.
but I heard about that.
Oh, Herman. Where's Diane?
Oh, she is getting things ready for my daughter's birthday tomorrow. She's got to do a little baking and things, and then she's going to go to the barber shoppers tonight.
Hey, and Calvin's going to be there. You'll get a picture
You can say
of her,
hi to her
maybe.
then.
Yeah. She's been involved with that for
Yes.
a long time. Let's get her. Come on over here. We want to get as many people involved here who worked as possible. Who are you?
I'm Peter Hornby.
Peter. I'm pleased to meet you. The other side of the Hornby family.
That's right.
Peter, what have you been doing here besides watching your wife work?
Oh, mostly watching my wife work. Mostly.
I'm kidding.
No, actually, I've done some painting, but most of what I do is support what she's doing. She does the history, types up the things, and then
all of us men do, if we're honest about it, isn't it?
I do the framing and build the frames and mount things, and then
no small
put them up on
project
display
and
here.
hang them up and put them on display, and it makes a great deal of difference when
She
somebody
does the
comes in
hard,
here
mental
who doesn't have a clue, and they look at that stuff, and you've done a
Thank you.
magnificent job.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
So you've been here a few thousand hours?
Oh, I don't know. We don't keep track, but I started about 2 years ago with Linda. We came over as a docent one time, and she said, do you like to paint? And we said, sure. So she said, well, next week
See how it happens?
we're going to work.
And
So
here we are today.
the rest is history, yeah.
But I'm just getting people's reactions about the fact that you've made it to this point in time. It's kind of nice.
It's wonderful, absolutely. I mean, today is the kind of the pinnacle of it, because it's the first time it's been open all afternoon to the public. We're getting such a great reaction. It's a museum now. I mean, it wasn't
a
a lighthouse.
museum. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there is a special attraction for lighthouses everywhere, but this one for you, because you spent so much time here, is really special.
Yeah,
I used to
absolutely.
come out by my kayak, you know.
Did you
It was
really?
hard carrying many tools, you know, there'd be paintbrush and a roller, and then go up here and work all alone. And it's really spooky because the wind blows and the windows rattle, and you think there's a ghost downstairs.
I was
you know,
hoping
you're
there'd be a good ghost here. I write ghost
We're working
stories.
on one. I'm sure there
Well,
is.
see what you guys can conjure up, huh?
Yeah, well, there was a birth here and a marriage here, so I don't know if there was a death here, but we could probably create one.
There probably was a birth here, come to
Yeah.
think of it. Some of the early lighthouse keepers had their families here, like some of the gals raised their kids right here.
Right.
And there was a marriage
Yeah.
that we learned about today. Are you into the history at all, Peter?
Somewhat. My wife is, Claudia's more
know
involved in
how-
that. She's
That's what
she's
teachers.
wonderful.
That's
She's
what
done-
teachers
that's
do
what teachers
best.
do.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm more into the physical end of the
Yeah.
work.
But it's all part of the picture, and you're painting a very nice picture. All of you are here today. Can you think of any other names that we might have?
What's Sally's last name? I'm not sure. Linda could tell you.
Well, find out from Linda.
A woman who's done a lot of work on the windows, replaced a lot of glass, and she has the glazing skill, and so she's done a lot of work, but she just wasn't able to make it today. Linda, what's Sally's last name?
Sally Goddard.
So good. We get Sally's.
She was supposed to be here. She called and said she was going to be here, but I'll bet she's making it down in time for this evening's proceedings, so she's going to miss that. But Sally's from Rouse's Point, and she volunteered to do the reglazing of all the windows that the glaze was rotten and falling out. You know how that gets so dry. So she did a couple here, but it's such a time-consuming job. It got to be funny because Roger would take the window out, we'd bring it across the lake, put it in my car, she'd meet me at Meyer Drug, pick up the window, go back to Rouse's Point, and bring it back a couple weeks later, and she was a professional. It was perfect when she did it. And she said she learned it from her dad, and she even had his old tools. Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic? Yeah. Listen, I think we just about expended our time here, so we'll wrap it up in a minute. She gets Roger here and says, think of something to say about Fred Finn.
Fred Finn is a lot to say. First of all, he's got great muscles. These iron bars have been in and out a few times, and several of those occasions Fred's been a lot of the muscle power with Roger doing that. And Fred's done a lot of painting for us. And he actually, we were just talking about reglazing, he did the glass in the doors coming in the hallway here. And believe it or not, Fred did the second coat of paint inside that little cupboard over there. I thought I was going to shut the door on him and never let him out till he finished. But and he's obviously supports his wife. Did the stairs, and
she did a magnificent job in those stairs. I really love that staircase.
Isn't that a beautiful piece of work?
It's spectacular.
And she worked really hard, sat there by herself so
anybody
many
who's
times.
done any woodworking as you have, Rod,
That's right.
you take a look.
It's beautiful. It's just a remarkable piece of work, and the finish that she has on it is just so nice. You know, Fred runs a print shop in Saranac Lake. They come down here every weekend, and as Linda mentioned, he's supported Heather's efforts, but they've supported each other, because so many times from our house we look over here, the door's open. It's Fred and Heather, or it's Fred, or it's Heather. And Fred has also done some printing for the organization, and he's been a real inspiration to a lot of people. So he's a great guy to have on board, both of them are.
We had no idea when we came here exactly what would transpire today. We had a rough idea that it was going to be a good time, but little did we know
The excitement.
that we were going to have that spyglass handed over. Did you see
No, I
it?
didn't. I had gone back with it.
You missed it.
I'm
You
sorry.
missed it, but that's all right. We'll make you part of it. We'll let you touch it with the purple gloves or whatever.
Oh, I didn't know where that was going.
That's great. What a treasure. What a great day.
Thank you for you and Calvin sharing this with us. We really appreciate
We're
it.
delighted to be here.
As always.
We always have to be good to the captain until he gets us on the other shore. Roger, thanks so much for all of your hard work, both of you. All the other people that are surrounding us, I hope we didn't forget any names. If we did, I can
I
only
hope
blame
not.
it on you, because I'm terrible.
I'll have to bake lots of brownies if I forgot
But
anybody.
if there were people who spent a little or a lot of time here whose name we didn't mention, we want to thank them here on this show.
Did you mention Mike Coolit coming out here? I don't know
He
if
was on
anybody
my
else.
list for tonight. And not only Mike, but there are also docents that, I don't know if you listed them or not. So many people open the lighthouse as part of the organization throughout the summer on the Sunday afternoons. And it's a an effort. And not only that, Frank brings them over for free. So it's
If anybody wants to be a docent, call us and we can sign you up and get a free ride out here, spend the day at the lighthouse, or actually it's only 3 hours.
And get it done. Our tape is almost run out. Thank you both very much. Thank you all for watching. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.